Have you ever noticed your mind drifting into a scene that doesn't exist? You're alone, doing something simple, and suddenly you're somewhere else. Maybe you're explaining yourself to someone who isn't there. Maybe you're finally saying everything you couldn't say before. Or maybe you're imagining a future where everything works out perfectly. It feels vivid, it feels emotional, and for a moment it almost feels real. But then you snap back, and nothing actually happened. If you find yourself doing this often, there's a question that quietly follows. Why does my mind keep creating these situations? Psychologically, this isn't just daydreaming, it's something deeper. Because when your brain repeatedly builds detailed emotional scenarios, it's usually trying to process something unresolved. These imagined moments aren't random, they're structured. There's a purpose behind them, and most of the time, that purpose is hidden. Your mind is constantly trying to predict, prepare, and protect you. So instead of waiting for real situations to happen, it creates its own version of them. This is known as mental simulation. Your brain runs what-if scenarios in the background, testing conversations, reactions, and outcomes before they ever happen. In small amounts, this is actually useful. It's how you prepare for difficult conversations. It's how you think before you act. But for some people, this system doesn't switch off. It keeps running, even when there's nothing to solve. And that's when imagination turns into a loop. You might replay moments from earlier in the day, but this time you say everything perfectly. You might imagine future situations where you finally prove yourself. Or your mind might go in the opposite direction, creating situations where everything goes wrong. And here's the important part. Your brain doesn't fully separate imagined experiences from real ones. That's why your emotions react. Your chest tightens, your mood shifts, your thoughts spiral, even though nothing is actually happening. Over time, these scenarios start to follow patterns. One common pattern is imagined conversations. You replay arguments or create new ones where you finally win. Another pattern is imagined success. You see yourself being recognized, understood, or validated in ways that real life hasn't given you yet. And then there's the third pattern, imagining worst-case outcomes. Your mind prepares for rejection, failure, or misunderstanding before any of it even begins. At first, it feels like thinking, but slowly it becomes something else. Because beneath all these scenarios, there's usually one core driver, the need for control. Real life is unpredictable. People don't respond the way we expect. Moments don't go as planned.
But in your imagination, everything follows your script. You control the dialogue, the reactions, the outcome, and that control can feel comforting, especially if you've experienced situations where you felt unheard, misunderstood, or unprepared. So your mind adapts. It starts rehearsing life instead of just living it. Not because you want to escape reality, but because your brain is trying to master it. But here's where things shift. The more time you spend in imagined scenarios, the more real life starts to feel uncertain, slower, even disappointing. Because reality doesn't offer perfect timing or perfect words, and it definitely doesn't follow a script. So the mind keeps returning to the place where it does, your imagination. This is how the habit becomes addictive, not in an obvious way, but in a quiet, repetitive cycle. You imagine, you feel, you reset, and then you do it again. And the more detailed those scenarios become, the harder it is to notice when you've drifted away. But here's the truth most people don't realize. Imagination itself isn't the problem. In fact, it's one of the most powerful abilities you have. It allows you to think ahead,
To create, to understand. The problem begins when imagination replaces experience. because no matter how many scenarios your mind creates, they can never fully prepare you for real moments. Real conversations are messy. Real outcomes are unpredictable. But that's also where growth happens. Not in the version you control, but in the one you don't. So if you often find yourself lost in imagined situations, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means your mind is active, aware, and constantly trying to make sense of things. The key is simply this. Notice when your imagination is helping you prepare, and when it's quietly pulling you away from reality. Because your mind can create endless versions of what could happen, but your life only moves forward in what actually does.